Some of the recent phenomena which we see in the world today has been due to the fact that there have been a number of expectations which have been generated by this phenomenon which we loosely refer to as globalization. However, these expectations have not been met. Globalization, for instance, has not meant a rising tide which has lifted all boats. Some people have actually become worse off, and in many parts of the world people have been not in the water at all and have therefore not been able to enjoy this rising tide which was promised by globalization. As a consequence, many people feel marginalized and distressed, and because of this distress, we find that people have been reacting in ways which perhaps might seem to be irrational, but nevertheless are understandable responses. So we have seen, for example, as has been documented by the Princeton professors Ann Case and Angus Deaton, a significant increase in stress among the so-called white American middle class. Actually, these are working class people who have had employment for much of their lives, but see their living standards and the future prospects of themselves and their children being threatened by a number of changes. Now, for various reasons, they have focused their resentment, their anger on the other meaning other countries, other societies, and as well as other people who look different, who behave differently, who are culturally different, and so on. As a consequence of this, we have seen the rise of a great deal of resentment along ethnic and cultural lines, due to what they perceive as the rise of these other peoples. So as one of these manifestations of this, of course, has been to focus on exclusion, on excluding the other, by tightening up on immigration policies, by expelling people who are already in the midst, by having policies which favor the dominant ethnic group or a dominant cultural group against other groups. And so we have this phenomenon, which is a very difficult and complex phenomenon, which manifests itself in different ways. Similarly, for example, almost 3 decades ago, when the Berlin Wall came down and the Soviet Union collapsed, we saw that the Russian economy collapsed by almost half. And as a consequence of this collapse and rapidly growing inequality, we find that we have seen huge increases in resentment. There was a huge increase in deaths, partly due to suicide and associated with other phenomena. And all this, of course, has resulted immediately in rejecting the non-white Russians from, for example, entering Moscow. So these are all different types of manifestations of a very complex phenomenon which are associated with the God that failed. And this time it is not the God of communism which failed, but in a sense it is the God of capitalism, or more specifically globalization and liberalization, which seems to have failed for these people.